My name is Joe Esposito. I was Elvis Presley's road manager and right-hand man and a very close friend of mine. I loved him very much. From the time we were discharged from the Army in 19...
For decades, certain mysteries of Elvis Presley remained hidden. Now, at 80, a close friend has finally revealed the secrets of the king of rock and roll. This confidant kept quiet about Elvis's double life, the side few ever saw. Could this shatter Elvis's perfect image? Join us as we uncover the details behind this confession. The mysterious persona of Elvis Presley. Elvis Presley was a name that echoed through every home, every radio, and every stage. He was more than a musician. He was a phenomenon. From the moment he stepped onto the stage, people were drawn to him. His voice, his movements, and his presence held a kind of magic that few could resist. The world saw him as confident, charming, and unstoppable. They saw a star who could light up a room, a man who carried the spirit of music itself. Everywhere he went, eyes followed, cameras flashed, and hearts raced. He was adored, admired, and admired again. Yet behind the fame, there was a man who was often quiet, reflective, and private. Away from the crowds and the bright lights, Elvis liked to retreat into his world. Graceland became his sanctuary, a place where he could be just Elvis, not the king. Few got to see the real him. Only those closest knew the gentle, sometimes fragile side of the man who seemed so larger than life. He spent hours reading, thinking, and enjoying moments that were calm and ordinary. This private side of him revealed a depth that contrasted sharply with the high-energy performances the world adored. The tension between the public and private sides of Elvis created a sense of mystery that followed him everywhere. Fans knew him as the king of rock and roll, yet the man behind the legend was sometimes shy and uncertain. On stage, he could electrify a crowd with a single gesture or a note held perfectly in the air. Offstage, he often preferred quiet companionship, simple pleasures, and moments of peace. This contradiction fascinated people. It made him human while keeping him extraordinary. Elvis's private life also revealed a man who cared deeply for family, friends, and those he trusted. Despite the whirlwind of fame, he valued connection and loyalty. Yet these personal relationships were often shielded from the public eye. His reclusiveness was not because he disliked people, but because he wanted to protect those he loved and to maintain a small piece of normalcy in a life that was anything but ordinary. This balance between public spectacle and private reflection defined the essence of Elvis Presley. He was at once a global icon and a man with quiet desires, simple joys, and private struggles. The contradictions in his life made him endlessly intriguing. But who was behind the confession, and what secrets were revealed? The confession at 80. Elvis Presley has always been remembered as the king of rock and roll, a larger-than-life figure whose voice, moves, and charisma captured hearts across the globe. For decades, the world knew him as a brilliant performer, a star whose presence could light up any stage. Fans adored him, critics analyzed him, and every step of his life was followed with fascination. Yet, behind the bright lights and the adoration, there existed a side of Elvis that remained hidden for most of his life, who carried the weight of decades of silence. This confession, gentle yet striking, opened a door into the private world of a man who had been, in so many ways, misunderstood. The individual who came forward was someone who had shared a long history with Elvis, witnessing his triumphs and struggles, his laughter and pain. For years, this confidant stayed silent, out of loyalty, respect, or perhaps fear. Speaking the truth about a figure as iconic as Elvis was not a simple matter. The story of his life was already monumental, and every edition could change the way millions viewed him. But time has a way of softening even the heaviest burdens, and at 80 years old, this friend felt a responsibility to share what they knew. The goal was not scandal, nor to tarnish his legacy. It was to present the full picture of a man whose humanity had often been obscured by fame. Through this confession, it became clear that Elvis led a double life in ways that were never fully understood by the public. The man who dazzled audiences with effortless charm, who seemed to have everything a person could wish for, also wrestled with private struggles that were seldom seen. Behind closed doors, his life was more complex, more fragile, and more deeply human than anyone could have imagined. Friends and family had always sensed that there was more to him than met the eye, but only now were the pieces beginning to come together in a way that painted a fuller portrait. One aspect of this hidden life involved his personal relationships. Elvis was fiercely loyal to those he loved, yet he struggled to balance the needs of family, friends, and the ever-demanding world of fame. His interactions were often marked by warmth and generosity, yet there were moments of tension, moments where the pressures of life on the road, the exhaustion of constant performance, and the weight of public expectation collided with the private man inside. He longed for connection, for love that was simple and uncomplicated, but fame made that nearly impossible. People he trusted most saw both sides of him, the magnetic entertainer and the vulnerable man longing for normalcy. The confessor revealed that Elvis's romantic life was more complicated than the world had known. His marriage, though loving in its ways, was shadowed by infidelities, some minor, some more serious. Letters from other women had been discovered by his then-wife, confirming suspicions and opening wounds that were deeply personal. These relationships were not about malice, but about the human complexity of desire, need, and loneliness. Elvis, for all his public brilliance, was also human in his imperfections. This aspect of his life revealed a man who was both deeply flawed and profoundly caring, a combination that made him intensely relatable even decades later. Substance struggles also formed part of the hidden narrative. The pressures of being Elvis Presley were immense. Every performance, every public appearance carried expectations that few could understand. To cope, he sometimes turned to substances that offered temporary relief, but complicated his life further. These struggles were intertwined with a desire to perform at the highest level, to maintain an image that the world had built around him, and to find personal peace in moments that felt overwhelming. The confessor's recounting of these challenges painted a picture of resilience, of someone trying to navigate the enormous contradictions between public adoration and private vulnerability. Another striking revelation centered on contradictions in his behavior. On stage, he was confident, electric, untouchable. Off stage, he could be anxious, introspective, and deeply sensitive. He alternated between extremes of energy and exhaustion, charm and shyness, openness and guardedness. Close friends witnessed a man who could laugh heartily one moment and be quietly reflective the next. This duality was perhaps the essence of his double life, the balance between the persona that the world adored and the private self that wrestled with ordinary human struggles. Understanding this made him not just an icon, but a profoundly human figure whose complexity only added depth to his legacy. After decades of silence, the need to tell the full story, to honor the humanity of someone who had touched millions of lives, became urgent. It was not about shocking the world, but about providing clarity, about helping people understand the fullness of Elvis Presley, beyond the legend. At 80, there was no fear of judgment, no concern for gossip. The desire was simply to tell the story as it had been lived, to preserve the truth of the man behind the music. Sharing these insights also offered a form of closure. The confessor, carrying the weight of secrets for so many years, felt a release in finally speaking them aloud. There was a sense of peace in revealing the human side of Elvis, a side that had been hidden but was never dishonest, never malicious, simply private and personal. In doing so, the confessor hoped that audiences could appreciate Elvis not only as a performer, but as a person of depth, struggle, and warmth, whose life was filled with both brilliance and difficulty. However, even behind the spotlight, Elvis's life was full of struggles. Elvis's quiet struggle. When Elvis Presley officially ended his marriage to Priscilla on October 9, 1973, the world saw a public figure at the height of fame, but few knew the turmoil that gripped his private life. Though their union had ended, Elvis and Priscilla remained connected through their daughter, Lisa Marie. They both worked carefully to provide her with a stable and loving environment, maintaining a cooperative and caring bond, even as their roles as husband and wife had ceased. While he tried to adjust to this new chapter, a quieter, more insidious struggle was beginning to take hold. His health was quietly deteriorating, By that time, the signs of exhaustion were impossible to ignore. Years of relentless performances, constant travel, and non-stop work had pushed his body to its limits. This strain was compounded by heavy use of prescription medications. In one alarming episode, he suffered an overdose of barbiturates, falling into a coma in his hotel room for several days, which led to an urgent hospital stay. Doctors noted that Elvis believed he was taking his medications safely under supervision, yet the cumulative effect on his body was severe.
And I looked at the foot of the bed and saw Dr. Nikopoulos, who was pacing there at the foot of the bed, and I thought, wow, that looks like Elvis's doctor.
The medications meant to assist instead weakened him, taking a toll both physically and mentally. He grew more fragile, his strength diminished, his once powerful presence slowly being eroded. Even as these warnings became apparent, Elvis refused to ease his pace. Despite his declining condition, he went on to undertake another taxing series of concerts the following year. Those closest to him began to notice the strain in his movements and demeanor. In September of 1974, during a performance in Maryland, his band immediately recognized something was wrong. He struggled to exit his limousine, faltering and falling to his knees while politely refusing assistance. On stage, the signs of fatigue were impossible to miss. He leaned heavily on the microphone stand, often appearing unsteady and having difficulty remaining upright. His speech was slower, his face showed the effects of weariness, and his once slim frame appeared bloated and tired. Audiences were concerned, sensing that the energy they had come to adore was waning. Friends and colleagues familiar with the man behind the music found it increasingly hard to reconcile this weary figure with the dynamic performer they knew. The music continued, yet the vitality that had always ignited the stage was beginning to fade. By July of 1976, pressures began to show not only on stage, but behind the scenes as well. Vernon Presley, Elvis's father, made the decision to dismiss 3 longtime bodyguards, Red West, Sonny West, and David Hebler. These men had been close companions for many years, loyal supporters who had protected and guided him. Vernon claimed the move was financially motivated, but speculation arose that it may have been connected to concerns about Elvis's reliance on medications. The dismissals sparked controversy and tension, revealing the increasingly complicated circumstances surrounding his life. Elvis's work in the recording studio also reflected the challenges he faced. In December of 1973, he had completed a successful session that provided material for 2 albums, showcasing his enduring commitment to his craft. Yet in 1974, he produced no new studio recordings. Instead, his manager, Colonel Tom Parker, released a live album from a Memphis concert, which included a track that would earn Elvis his final Grammy Award. This recognition highlighted the ongoing importance of gospel music to him, a genre that had always been central to his heart. In 1975, he attempted to return to studio work, but the sessions were short and fraught with difficulty. By 1976, RCA brought a portable studio to Graceland to make recording more convenient, yet even at home he struggled. Completing 2 full sessions proved exhausting. Concentration was difficult, and the quiet of the studio contrasted sharply with the energy he had once thrived upon. Each song required immense effort, and although his voice remained brilliant, the effortless magic that had once flowed naturally was now harder to summon. During these years, the public continued to see the vibrant superstar they loved, unaware of the battles raging behind the curtains. Elvis faced each challenge with persistence and determination, refusing to surrender to fatigue, illness, or the pressures of his private life. The man who had once filled every stage with uncontainable energy now navigated life with visible strain, carrying weight that could not be alleviated by fame, talent, or applause alone. Even in the midst of immense struggles, he continued to give his all to his fans, determined to honor the music and the audience that had propelled him to extraordinary heights. Behind the glittering lights, however, was a life of quiet struggle, a body worn down by years of relentless performance, and a spirit trying to hold together the pieces of a complex and demanding world. Now let's take a look at how the world reacted to Elvis' hidden life. The world reacts to Elvis's hidden life. When news surfaced that a close friend of Elvis Presley had revealed details of his so-called double life, The world of those who knew him best was shaken. For decades, many had only glimpsed fragments of the man behind the legend, but now private stories were finally coming to light. These revelations offered new perspectives, sparking a mix of reflection, curiosity, and, for some, a sense of sadness. Priscilla Presley, who shared a long and complex history with Elvis, found herself revisiting memories that had been carefully tucked away. Hearing about this hidden side of him added layers to her understanding of the man she once loved. The revelations reminded her that Elvis, like everyone, had aspects of his life that were private and complicated. Even after all these years, these stories prompted her to reflect on the challenges he faced, the pressures of fame, and the ways he navigated personal struggles while maintaining his public image. Those who had been part of Elvis's inner circle, often referred to as the Memphis Mafia, were also affected. Many had spent years by his side, witnessing the highs of fame and the lows of exhaustion, stress, and personal conflict. The new disclosures brought back memories of private moments that had never been spoken about publicly. Friends and colleagues recognized some truths while being surprised by others, realizing that even after decades of knowing him closely, there were aspects of his life they had never fully understood. Their reactions were a mix of nostalgia, concern, and deep reflection, emphasizing the complexity of the man they had called a friend. The public, of course, responded with curiosity and emotion. Fans who had idolized Elvis for decades were intrigued by the idea that there had been hidden layers to his personality and life. Some felt a sense of shock, struggling to reconcile the image of the flawless, larger-than-life entertainer with the reality of his private experiences. Can have a private side filled with challenges and contradictions. Social media, forums, and fan communities buzzed with discussion, debates, and shared memories, showing how deeply people still care about his story. Beyond immediate reactions, the confession also has the potential to reshape how historians view Elvis's life. By revealing the complexities of his personal world, it provides context for his decisions, his music, and the way he lived. Scholars and biographers can now look at his career and personal journey with fresh eyes, understanding more fully the pressures that shaped his actions. This reassessment does not diminish his accomplishments. Instead, it humanizes him, allowing people to appreciate not just the superstar, but the man behind the stage persona. Culturally, these revelations offer a broader conversation about celebrity and privacy. Elvis's life has long been a symbol of fame's allure and its demands. Learning that even someone as admired and idolized as Elvis had private struggles reminds the world that public figures carry burdens unseen by their audience. Fans, journalists, and the general public are prompted to reconsider expectations placed on celebrities and the balance between admiration and intrusion. The story underscores that fame does not erase humanity. It amplifies the need for understanding, compassion, and respect. For those closest to Elvis, the confession has a deeply personal resonance. Old friends, family members, and longtime colleagues find themselves reflecting not just on what was revealed, but on their memories of him. The revelations inspire moments of nostalgia, gratitude for shared experiences, and sometimes sorrow for the struggles he endured silently. They reinforce the bond that continues to exist long after his passing and highlight the enduring influence he has on the lives of those who loved him most. However, one of the most heartbreaking aspects of Elvis's story was his death. The final years of Elvis Presley. By the end of 1976, Elvis Presley was no longer the unstoppable, vibrant performer that the world had admired for decades. His once boundless energy had begun to fade, and the dazzling lifestyle he had led for so long had quietly shifted to a more private and subdued existence. Following the end of his relationship with Linda Thompson, Elvis entered a new chapter in his personal life when he began dating Ginger Alden in November of that year. Their connection quickly deepened, and just 2 months later he proposed to her, showing a desire for companionship, stability, and perhaps a renewed sense of hope in the midst of growing personal challenges. Yet behind the glamour and the public persona, Elvis's physical health had begun to show clear signs of strain. Years of relentless performing, non-stop travel, and the pressures of fame had taken their toll. His reliance on prescription medications further complicated matters, leaving his body weakened and his energy levels inconsistent. The once athletic frame that moved with effortless grace on stage had begun to show signs of fatigue. On some occasions, he struggled to perform, his voice faltering and his lyrics momentarily forgotten. During a series of concerts in Baton Rouge, the exhaustion became so severe that he was unable to leave his bed, forcing the postponement of 4 shows. Despite these setbacks, Elvis remained determined to fulfill his commitments to his fans. He continued touring, attending public events, and performing whenever possible, even when his body signaled the need for rest. The pressures of meeting expectations did not allow him much reprieve, and gradually he began retreating into the quiet of home life. These quieter moments offered solace away from the public eye. He spent hours reading, exploring spirituality and religion, and reflecting on his life. In these private hours, he sought peace, grounding himself in thought and introspection. Elvis also treasured time with family. These small, intimate moments became a sanctuary, a refuge from the intensity of fame and performance. As he tried to navigate these personal spaces, he still managed to share his music with the world. In June of 1977, he released a new single, Way Down, which would ultimately be the last song he released during his lifetime. That same month, CBS filmed 2 of his concerts for a television special. At the first performance in Omaha, he appeared fragile, his voice weaker than usual, struggling to maintain the clarity and energy audiences had come to expect. 2 days later, at a concert in South Dakota, he showed slight improvement, having lost a small amount of weight and regained some measure of his vocal strength. Yet even then, by the end of the performance, his pallor and visible exhaustion were clear. His final live show took place on June 26, 1977, in Indianapolis. At the time, no one realized this would be the last time he performed in front of an audience. That same month brought additional challenges. A book written by 3 of his former bodyguards revealed details of his extensive use of prescription medications. The disclosure caused Elvis considerable emotional distress. Despite his efforts to prevent its publication, including offering money to stop it, the information became public, exposing struggles that had been largely hidden from the world. At the same time, his physical health continued to deteriorate. He faced high blood pressure, liver complications, an enlarged colon, and glaucoma, all increased by years of dependency on prescription substances. Still, he sought moments of happiness wherever possible. In early August, shortly before his passing, Elvis rented an entire amusement park for himself and a small group of friends, creating one last private day of joy and laughter. It was a brief but precious respite from the mounting pressures and physical difficulties he faced. Tragically, just days later, on August 16, 1977, a planned trip to Maine for a new tour would never happen. That morning, Ginger Alden found Elvis unconscious on the bathroom floor at Graceland. Despite immediate efforts to revive him and the rush to Baptist Memorial Hospital, he was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. at the age of 42.
August 16, 1977, the day the world learned the king of rock and roll.
The world was left stunned. Fans flocked to Graceland, mourning the sudden loss of the king of rock and roll. The cultural impact of his death was immense, with widespread media coverage and public reflection on his contributions to music and entertainment. His funeral took place at Graceland on August 18th, attended by tens of thousands. Tragically, an accident outside the gates claimed the lives of 2 young fans and injured another. Approximately 80,000 people accompanied his body to Forest Hill Cemetery, where he was laid to rest beside his mother, completing a journey that had been both extraordinary and humanly fragile.
And each August, thousands of fans continue to flock to Memphis to remember the legendary performer's life and legacy.
Even in death, Elvis's music continued to resonate. In a later effort to protect him, his body was moved to the meditation garden at Graceland after an attempt was made to steal it. This serene resting place reflected the dignity and peace that he deserved, providing a final sanctuary for the king, a space that honored the life, the music, and the enduring spirit of a man who had touched the hearts of millions around the world. Even after Elvis's death, some mysteries still remain unsolved. The enduring mysteries of Elvis Presley. Ever since Elvis Presley passed away, curiosity and stories about his life have never truly ceased. For many, it was hard to accept that someone so full of energy, talent, and charisma could vanish so suddenly. His absence felt almost impossible to comprehend, leaving a space that seemed too vast to be filled. In the wake of this disbelief, countless stories began to circulate, shared from one person to another in homes, restaurants, on radio programs, and later, across the internet. People were desperate to make sense of the sudden end of such an extraordinary life, and when clear answers were elusive, imagination and speculation filled the gap. One of the most persistent ideas suggested that Elvis had faked his death. According to these accounts, he quietly left the hospital, evading the gaze of fans, reporters, and the world at large. In these imagined scenarios, he disappeared to live a calm and ordinary life. Over time, numerous claims surfaced from people insisting they had glimpsed him in airports, shops, and other everyday locations. Witnesses described someone who looked older but unmistakably familiar. Even if his voice was softer and his movements slower, there was something recognizable about the figure they saw. Occasionally, blurry photographs appeared depicting individuals who seemed to resemble him. While none of these could be verified, each one fueled excitement and hope for those who found it hard to accept that Elvis was gone. Even minor details became focal points for speculation. Visitors to Graceland noticed that his middle name on the tombstone was spelled differently from his birth certificate. Born Elvis Aaron Presley, the marker read Aaron. Some saw this as a hint, perhaps suggesting that the person resting there was not him. Others interpreted it as a tribute to his twin brother, who had passed away at birth. These small anomalies sparked even more imaginative theories. Some imagined that Elvis had connections with influential figures who had helped him disappear. Others speculated that he had entered some form of witness protection, vanishing from public life with official assistance. These stories often resembled suspenseful tales, full of secrecy, danger, and intrigue, capturing the minds of those who loved mysteries as much as music. Despite the intrigue, none of these claims could be confirmed. They remained stories passed along through communities, shared in whispers and online conversations. Elvis came to be remembered not only as a remarkable singer and performer, but also as a figure shrouded in mystery. Television specials, books, and documentaries explored the possibility that he might still be alive, keeping public curiosity alive and offering a glimmer of hope to those who had difficulty letting go. For fans visiting Graceland, the experience was about more than paying tribute. Many imagined a world in which Elvis might still exist somewhere, quietly watching over those who loved him. While these theories stirred excitement and wonder, most people focused on verified facts, acknowledging that there was no real proof behind the stories. Yet the rumors persisted, powered by the affection and admiration that fans felt for him. Elvis's music, energy, and personality had touched the lives of millions, creating connections that were hard to sever. These stories of his possible survival were less about deception and more about devotion. They reflected the deep love and enduring respect people held for him, showing how profoundly his life and artistry had resonated across generations. Even if unlikely, the idea that Elvis might still be among us in some quiet, hidden way captured the hearts of those who could not let go, ensuring that the king of rock and roll would continue to inspire wonder long after his passing. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.